Another season and another loss away from home at Old Trafford. It's just a place that we go to and we just do not win. And yeah, we're cursed there. It's just no matter how good we play, we still just cannot beat United away from home. And it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like I'm annoyed, definitely 100% because I think when you play well, you wanna reap the rewards of that, and I'm also annoyed that there were some choices made within the game that I do think ultimately cost us, and I'm also seeing some of the same fragility in some players that I feel like needs to be ironed out if we're gonna be going to the next level. But you move forward, making sure you beat the teams that you're supposed to, give you a cushion so you can stay top of the league when you lose a game. And I think that's why it's so important to make sure you beat the teams that you're supposed to, which we have. And I think we will continue to, because if we play the way that we played today, or the way that we played yesterday against most teams, we will beat them. And so, yeah, we have hits and misses today. We have to go through them. There's a lot of things to talk about, and let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacino Tweets and at She Knows Arsenal, and on Instagram at Jacino Graham. Follow me there as well. So we lost. Manchester United 3, Arsenal 1. And yeah, the scoreline doesn't look great, but anybody who watched that game has to be honest, it was very, very close game and it was very fine margins. Manchester United 100% deserved to win the game. My rule is whoever scored the most goals in the game deserves to win. That's it, period. So I'm not going to say that they didn't deserve to win or they were lucky. Their game plan worked and ours didn't. Fair enough. But for an Arsenal fan, you have to look at that game and say there were a lot of good things, a lot of positives in that performance. And unlike, the Manchester City performance and Liverpool of last season, it wasn't, oh, we had good spurts. Like for probably 60% of the game, maybe 70, we were the better team. And had we had made our dominance count, I think it would have been a completely different game. We can also look at the decision that was made to call the foul in the middle of the pitch against Ericsson. And that goal came at a time where if you go 1-0 up, you're in a completely different situation. And even after that, the way that we were playing really well. Because in the first 15 minutes, I do think Man United were on top. But you know, there were just a lot of moments in the game, and this is what when you're playing at the highest level, the game is so quick and 2 teams are quite evenly matched. This is how it goes. It's very fine margins, and they got the better of us, and we just have to hold that. Gabriel Jesus was unlucky to be on the losing team. He had an excellent game, and I think he showed some of the players on Arsenal that when you go away from home at Old Trafford, this is a way that you need to perform. You can't be scared, and you need to really impose yourself on the game. There were so many moments where they'll tell a different story, but he absolutely bullied Lisandro Martinez and Varane. 100%. He bought us so many fouls, they couldn't deal with him. And in a game where I thought that we may look a little bit light up top, we actually didn't look like a team that was being swallowed by the center backs. Like Gabriel Jesus really stood up. There was one ball where we were under pressure. Ramsdale just kicks the ball way up the pitch and Gabriel Jesus chases that lost cause, bullies Lisandro Martinez, and we get a foul from that. And that was how he was the entire game. They could not live with him. And I think in spurts, Martinelli had a similar effect, but Gabriel Jesus is on a completely different level than the rest of our attackers. He was unlucky not to get a goal. He had one of those chances that went just right around the post. But I would say defensively and offensively and everything that we did, he had a very well-rounded game and he just showed levels. And I think we needed maybe another one of a Gabriel Jesus in our team. And, we do have decent players off of the bench like Nketiah, Emil Smith Rowe, but it's just different when you have a player that's elite like Gabriel Jesus. Yeah, I thought he had a great game, and so we'll see how that unfolds. I think the rest of the attackers need to look at the way that he applies himself in the game and try to mimic that. I think if they were brave like him and kind of took responsibility the way that he did, we would get more from our attack. But of course, like he's been playing in an elite setup for a lot longer than the other players. So you have to give them some leeway off of that. But you could just see that we could really use a Gabriel Jesus in midfield. We could really use another Gabriel Jesus up top. And those are the type of recruitment moves that need to happen over the next year or so, because that could be the difference between us making our benchmarks and not. My second hit is going to be Fabio Vieira. Came off of the bench and had a 15-minute cameo that I wish we would have seen him in a different circumstance. Like, if you're gonna put him out there against Manchester United, why didn't you put him out there against Fulham? Why didn't you put him out there against Bournemouth? Maybe he wasn't ready, but, it would have been nice to see him before that so that he could have got some more time under his belt. But he made a lot out of those 15 minutes, and what I liked about his intention in those 15 minutes was he wanted to score a goal. We were down and we needed goals, and he came out there with the intention to make a goal happen, whether that was taking the shot himself or that really nice ball into Martinelli that on another day we connect with that and that goes in the back of the net. I think, shows what kind of player he is. And he's a shoot first, ask questions later type of player. He has a great ball striking technique as well. And so coming into, a game against FC Zurich in midweek in the Europa League, I definitely want to see him start. Emil Smith Rowe has picked up an injury, so he may not play at all in that game, but we need to see Vieira because I think he can be very pivotal for us in this season where we really lack players that have that shoot first mentality. And yeah, I think that's ultimately what cost us today more than anything is that we didn't have the mentality to make our dominance count. But somebody like Vieira coming into the team with that mentality may also push players that play in similar positions to take a freaking shot. Just take a freaking shot. 30 million for Fabio Vieira needs to be worth it. It needs to be a player that can really affect the first team this season. And so for me, like Fabio Vieira definitely looks like he has that. So I want to see more from him. So he's my second hit. Went back and forth on whether I wanted to give it to Martinelli or this player, but I think I'm going to give it to this player and it's going to be Ben White. I know that we shipped 3 goals, but none of those goals really came from anything that he did. I think ultimately he had a very, very good game and he was unlucky to be on the wrong side. I thought he's really growing into that position, and he was gutted at the end of the game. I think he did feel like he could have done something for that 3rd goal, but really the defending in midfield was so catastrophic for that. It was just so below par that the defenders, especially Ben White, should not feel like they didn't do enough in that moment. But I think his performance is gonna go forgotten because he was on the wrong side, but he was relatively flawless in that game. I mean, some of his passing was really, really good. He really stopped Sancho. Like Sancho was very much so nullified on that side. He did absolutely nothing. And a lot of that was because Ben White was so good in possession. He was great. He did some really great overlaps. He was good. Like I thought Ben White had a sneaky good game, and I wanted to make sure that I gave him a shout out because it will go unnoticed because we shipped 3 goals, but I don't think he did much wrong to be on the wrong side. And what I like about Ben White is I think he's showing a mentality of a player that can play for a top team. Um, Arteta said in All or Nothing that he was one of the players that plays like it's the Champions League final every single game, and I think that's what you're seeing. He does make mistakes, but I think you see a mentality from him and a lot more comfort on that side than you see on the other side. I think it's because of the way that he plays, and, yeah, I thought Ben White had a sneaky good game, unfortunate to be on the wrong side, and those are the hits. I could have named a couple more players. I think Saka was alright, and I think Martinelli was good too, but I just think Ben White was great. So now let's get to the misses. My first miss is actually gonna be the attack, and in particular, the dominance that we had in those 60 minutes where we were playing really well, where nobody seemed to wanna pull the trigger. I get that we had a goal that was, called back. We had Saka had a goal, but in that spell, we could have had 3 goals. We could have had 3 goals, and I look at the opportunity that 2 opportunities that Odegaard had where he tried to do something fancy and it didn't work, a little back heel flick where he's in in the 6-yard box, you need to take a shot because you never know what could happen. It could go out for a corner, it could deflect off of their player, it could be rebounded from a defender or the goalkeeper, and somebody could run in and get a tap in. So you need to be shooting there. Who are you flicking it to? Then there was another opportunity where Gabriel Jesus, again, I think he bullied Lisandro Martinez again and was in on goal. Perfect cutback to Martin Odegaard on his left foot, and he scuffed it. And he scuffed it. Like, big opportunities in a game where it really matters in its fine margins. That's 2 goals right there. Then you have, the Saka chance that came, I think after one of the Odegaard chances, we recycled it. Probably should have been putting that away from that angle. And you also have, a Martinelli header that was really well saved by De Gea. But ultimately, when they can say to their blue in the face that that was their plan was to snuff out our chances, and they just wanted to sit in and play on the counter. But had we had scored any of those chances, that wouldn't have looked like a really good game plan. And that's the difference is when you're clinical, your game plan looks way better than the other team. But I think clinical finishing is not really about the plan, it's about the individuals in those moments. And so the individuals in their moments made their game plan look better, but our game plan was just fine. We just were not clinical. And that's where I really push back on the idea that Arsenal should have played differently in that game. I'm seeing a lot of revisionism and a lot of results-based analysis in terms of the way that we play. If you think that Arsenal should not have played a high line yesterday, and that was the main issue on why we lost, you are 100% wrong. I'm here to tell you that you are wrong. You are. You're wrong. And the reason why you're wrong is because the top 6 teams don't change the way that they play based on the opposition. They make tweaks, but they don't change the philosophy and the general style of play because they're playing somebody different. That's what the teams in the lower half do. We don't do that. And even the teams in the lower half aren't doing it anymore. They play their style. That's what you do. And you hope that in the openings that you make, in the way that you play, your players have the ruthlessness in those positions to make your plan look better. And there was absolutely nothing wrong with our plan. Now, the substitutions, which we'll talk about, were the ultimate downfall of this game because ultimately it was a 2-2 game. I'm going to say that right now. I think the way that the two teams played had everything kind of worked out where we were more clinical and we didn't make those substitutions. It probably would have been a 2-2 game. It was very even. It really was. But, those subs just yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But it wasn't our high line. If we go back and we say, okay, well, we should have changed the way that we played and played a little bit deeper. So you're basically saying that you want to put us in a position where Manchester United are peppering our goal and we're trying to play on the counterattack. I don't actually think that that would have made a huge difference. I really don't, because I don't think we're a really, really good counterattacking side. I don't think that that's the way that we want to be playing. And I ultimately think that Arsenal fans need to be accountable because when we were playing like that, you were mad because we weren't dominating games and we didn't have possession. When we were playing like that and we were beating big teams, you didn't like it. So don't sit back and now say that we should be changing the way that we play. Good teams don't do that. So we're going to get caught out. We are going to get caught out sometimes because the way that we play, we don't have much of a contingency behind us. But we're going to beat 90% of the teams like that. So why would we change our way of play? We were not ruthless. That was the issue. We were not ruthless. Had we had been ruthless in those moments where Odegaard was 6 feet out from the goal and could have just tapped it in the goal, we would not be saying that the high line killed us because it was a tight game and people need to keep it real. So if you think it was the high line, you're wrong. You are. Sorry, you are. You're wrong. And the attack needed to be more ruthless. And the other issue in the game was the substitutions. The substitutions killed the game. At 1-1, we were fine. At 2-1, we were fine. That goal was against the run of play. That goal was against the run of play, and that happens. And ultimately, we had chances in that spell where it should not have even been 2-1. Probably should have been 2-2. Again, it was a very, very tight game, tight margins. So those substitutions that Arteta made 20 minutes from the end of the game, the Hail Mary when we were still dominating the game and that goal came against the run of play, we should have just kept playing our game. Because had we had kept playing our game, we probably would have broke through or scored a goal. What he could have done was he could have just maybe changed Emil Smith Rowe for one of, maybe Odegaard. Maybe he should have done that, whatever. Maybe he could have changed Vieira for Odegaard. But what he didn't need to do was take out Zinchenko and put us in a three back and then have a midfield of Vieira, Xhaka, and I even forget who was in there because he took out Sambi. And so a lot of our structure was gone from that moment. And I don't think he actually needed to do that. I think he panicked and he thought, okay, we're gonna go into coming from behind mode. And I really do think that if he had just waited 10 more minutes and then thrown the kitchen sink at it if we weren't really getting anything out of it at that moment, that would have been better. Now, in terms of the Zinchenko sub, you could say that that was based on maybe his fitness. Bring in Tierney. Bring in Tierney, like, do that instead. Like, I know that Tierney hasn't played amazing, but he would have given us more structure. He took our structure away, and right after that, our midfield was it was it had no shape. Like, nobody knew where they were supposed to be. Everybody was out of position because nobody knew what we were doing, and then they our press was out of sync. They won the ball and then they played it in behind. So I think our midfield being disjointed based on the subs was actually a bigger issue than the high line. I think that's lazy narrative and that's a lazy excuse because basically you want to go back to the narrative that Arteta should be playing in low blocks and playing three at the back against big teams away from home. No one does that. No one does that. The Arsenal does not do that. But those substitutions are what actually killed us. Those substitutions, because we lacked shape and it was rash and we panicked and we had no structure in front of our back line. And that's ultimately what killed us. The third goal, the midfield for that goal, and I can put in a screenshot here, was like non existent. So it didn't matter about the high line. It really didn't because we had no structure in our midfield and it was really just more about that. So I'm sorry, but that's where Arteta needs to take the culpability. I get it worked against Fulham. 20 minutes out, we throw the kitchen sink at it, we take off a defender and we go full attack. But it was just so we had just got scored against, we probably should have waited another 5 minutes to settle and then make 1 or 2 subs, not 3. And then you also brought in somebody that had never played with Arsenal before. This is where the Vieira sub doesn't make sense. Although his cameo was great, why are you bringing him in now and then we have no shape? I really think what it was it? Was it Xhaka and Vieira and that's it. Like, I honestly don't even know who was in there because I know he took out Zinchenko and Sambi. It felt panicked and it didn't work. Worked against Fulham, didn't work today. So I think Arteta needs to take that and hold that because that was just not smart, especially because we just didn't need to be doing that. And then once that happened, they could kind of sit in further and then they just continued to play on the counter. But we didn't have the ability to control the game like we were doing before because the entire game we pretty much were in control. So it was strange that he did that. So, yeah, my second miss definitely has to be those substitutions. Didn't think they worked out at all. It just discombobulated and disjointed everything that we're trying to do, especially in the press. And then once we got bypassed on the press, which happens, they played it in behind. And so the ultimate, you could say the the symptom was our high line being beaten, but the diagnosis is actually because our midfield was disjointed. And that's actually what I'm trying to say. So there you go. That's my second miss. And my third miss is going to be probably harsh. And I hate to say it, but it's certain players being, it's a common theme that we have certain players that in big games, they just make a mistake and they panic and they don't have the mentality during those moments. And I do think that Gabriel and Ramsdale, for me, tend to be the culpable characters in that. Love both players. And I think when we're playing well, it's like 90% of the time they do the right things and they're better than most players in those positions in those 90 and in that 90% of the time. But the 10% of the time, I'm even going to make it smaller. The 5% of the time, when we need them to be the players that we know them to be, they panic or they don't make the right decision. And ultimately, it costs us when it's fine margins. And I think Gabriel on the first goal is so rash and nowhere near where he should be because him being out of position, Sambi pressed, and maybe Sambi shouldn't have pressed because you have to go back. When you look at goals, you have to go back and say, how did this actually happen? Sambi pressed and he left a gap. And Gabriel came across all the way across, left his pocket on the left-hand side, and was in front of Saliba and White on the right-hand side, diving into a tackle. Didn't make it. Rashford gets the ball and plays it into the space that Gabriel ultimately should have been in. Zinchenko comes over and leaves Antony free, and then Ramsdale leaves the whole right side of his goal open, and just lets I mean, he probably could have been in a better position to save that goal. Like, that was the worst goal that they scored on the day. And so I think Gabriel being rash, which we saw that against Crystal Palace last season, was when he doesn't have the ability to be calm in moments where he really needs to be. He's a great one-on-one defender. He's good on the ball. He scores goals for us, but in moments where he needs to have the mentality to be calm, he doesn't do it, and it costs us a lot. And a lot for Arsenal is, a point here, 2 points here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's fine margins. Like, I'm not saying he costs us. Again, 95% of the time, he's very good. 5% of the time, he's bad and he costs us. And those are the fine margins that cost us at the end of the day. Last season, he got the red card against Manchester City. I thought that all came off of the back of just being just overly upset about the fact that Granit Xhaka got the penalty called against him. Him and Ramsdale are kicking the penalty spot, and then he actually fouls Gabriel Jesus when he's on a yellow card because of that, because of him kicking the spot, and then he gets sent off. You just kinda see these moments over and over again. Ramsdale against Liverpool at home, 2 goals on the front post. He makes the mistake for the Madison goal this season as well. Like, it's just a repeat where I keep seeing it, and I'm like, Gabrielle against Fulham, it's the same culprits. It's Saliba was once, maybe Ben White once, but Ramsdale and Gabrielle tend to be culpable for a lot of goals when it's fine margins, when we really need, them to be stronger. Are these things that they can get over? I don't know. I can hope and pray that these are things that they get over, but I'm not sure that they do. Maybe it's just a kink. Maybe that's just the way that they are. And we just hope that the pros outweigh the cons. But in games where the game is so close, we shouldn't have to score 3 goals in order to win the game, and I think when you look at even against Villa and Fulham, you know, those were 2-1 games where we were totally dominant. We probably should have scored more goals, but our defense gave up silly goals and made it a lot closer than it needed to be, and so I think the United game was really just a microcosm of who we are at the moment. Is a team very good, dominates most games, doesn't have enough clinical finishing. We're not ruthless enough in front of goal. And then because we let the margins be really tight, the players that we need to be really good at when games are fine margins don't come up big for us when we really need them to. And this time we didn't get away with it because we played a team that was much better than Villa and a team that was much better than Fulham. And that's just who we are at the moment. Does that need to change? Absolutely, because where we are as a team is that we're probably gonna win more games than we did last season because, we won't lose to, I don't know, Southampton. We won't lose to this team, we won't lose to that team, whatever. Those games won't happen because most games we will dominate. But the games against the big teams, when we're dominant, we need to make it count because we have players in positions that are really important that when the 5% comes around where they need to be good, they tend to have a brain fart. And so, that's just where we are. And it's not to kill Gabrielle and Ramsdale. I really do love them as players, but you know, you could look at it either way. You could say either the tack needs to be more ruthless so that when they make the mistake, it doesn't hurt us as bad, or they just need to keep the score down. They need to stop giving up unnecessary goals and being rash and making silly decisions and the unforced errors and things like that. So, yeah, you can say it's a young team, you can say all that, but I just think yesterday was a microcosm of who we are right now, and it does need to improve. We need to get better at that, and we need to take out the mistakes. The mistakes need to go away, and when we're in front of goal, you need to pull the trigger. And so, yeah, but the last thing I want to touch on, and I know this is a little bit longer than it usually is, but I think because there's just so much more to talk about, is just kind of like the lack of consistency in the calls, and that's why I think a lot of Arsenal fans are frustrated. The game before ours, Brighton versus Leicester, the first goal that Leicester scored, Yuri Tielemans just pushed one of the Brighton players off the ball and didn't win it. It was contact. He just pushed him off the ball. The guy was kind of just fell on the ground. He passed it to one of the Leicester players. They cross it in and they score a goal. No problem with that. Then in our game, Odegaard has contact with Eriksson. He goes down quite easily, and we score a goal off of the back of it. The referee didn't say anything. VAR intervened, and they called it a foul. And I think that's where the inconsistencies come in, and where at the beginning of the season they say that the contact is going to be more heavily scrutinized in terms of like every single contact that you have is not going to be deemed a foul. And I don't think contact, even if you don't get the ball, is not a foul. And I think that's the territory that we were in, is that the contact from Odegaard, not in the moment, but on replay, was deemed so forceful that it had to be a foul. And I think it's more subjective than anything. And in moment, was it so clear and obvious where they needed to overturn it? Well, the referee on the pitch didn't think so. And so maybe you just go with the on field decision. But as you look over it over and over and over again and you slow it down, then it looks so much worse. But in the real moment is probably where you get the best view of it, which was Ericsson went down very lightly and Odegaard put a little bit of pressure on him. And that was it. And those kind of goals happen. Last season we had something similar where Sarr and one of our players against Watford had contact. We won the ball and we scored, and they felt like it was a foul because there was contact and we didn't win the ball. And so, yeah, like I think that should have been a goal. Like, I think it should have been a goal. I think it was soft, and because they were at Old Trafford and the United fans got in their face and they watched it over and over and over again, then the on-field decision wasn't upheld, even though it wasn't clear and obvious, and Eriksson clearly went down easy, and the reason why I know he did is because most people said he did. Even United pundits were saying it, and usually they're very biased. So, Eriksson went down soft, and he got lucky, and we should have gotten that goal. But that doesn't mean that we deserve to win or anything like that, but just that goal could have changed the game, and it didn't. So those are my hits and misses. Yeah, we just have to rebound against Everton. We have the game against Zurich, but I think we'll be fine there. Rebound against Everton and we're fine. I know people are making it out to seem like the season is over now and blah, blah, blah. But this is why you have to win the games that you're supposed to. Because when you come up against your rivals, especially at Old Trafford, a place that you don't play well at and you rarely get points at, it's important to make sure you have a cushion. And that's what we have. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.